everybody, in a...
My name is Ralph Thayer. I live at 416 Patlin Drive in Fairhope. I came to ask your consideration of passing a generic ordinance establishing an historic district commission for the city of Fairhope. Many smaller communities and larger communities have committed themselves to historic preservation with such an ordinance. Two things I'd like to point out is that it's not an attack on property rights. It's often construed as such, but there have been many successful historic districts. I know Mr. Kingrey comes over from New Orleans, and there are 17 historic districts in New Orleans, ranging from, of course, the Bouquet, which is a separate entity, to many smaller districts, as many as 3-block districts. We would like to have this district set up so that we could bring to the people more preservation topics, more focus to the topic. It's good for business. It brings people to a community, especially with the difficulties overseas, if I can say it that way. More and more people are resorting to domestic tourism and coming to places where they can find historic resources, something that has been called in a very recent book, a sense of place. And this is what I'd like to work with Fairhope on, helping, and the Historic Preservation Committee, of which I am honored to be a member, of recent vintage, I might say. We're trying to bring this to the people's attention and to your attention. There are so many benefits. There are federal monies that are available. Of course, it's going to be a mad scramble getting federal monies now, but if you don't have a district, you don't have a chance. And there are foundations and other entities that will support historic preservation done in a, should we say, a rational and comprehensive sense. Finally, there are other members of the Historic District Commission here who are far longer residents of the city than I. Mr. Ford and I had some discussions about some of his properties in the district. I've only lived here for 2 years, but in New Orleans, I renovated 4 historic homes, and I lived in 3 different historic districts. Yes, occasionally they told me I shouldn't do something that I wanted to do, but I will say on balance, the advice that I got was good for me economically, and it helped me when my neighbors followed the same guidelines that I followed. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have about that, and I'll ask some of the other members of the commission share their experiences.
When you say a historic district, they're different districts, not just one district, is
No,
that
sir.
correct?
The commission would be set up, and then the districts would be sub to the commission itself.
Right.
The commission would likely have representation from each of the districts, plus representation that you people would appoint and the mayor would appoint. It's to try to represent as broad a scope of interest as possible in there.
And it's my understanding that your group now is in the process of an educational going on with the citizens, the residents of Fairhope. So when this does come up, they will know what's going on, and there won't be a big backlash because of lack of knowledge.
Well, no guarantees, but we're certainly trying to get the word out as best we can. And anytime we are offered the opportunity to speak to a group, to put forth the position, we're certainly willing to do that at any time. And if you think there's any groups that we should meet with that are particularly important with your interest in mind, I'm glad to meet with them.
We try to get the people to come here and invite us to their group. They won't do it. Anybody else? Rick?
Yeah. Are y'all envisioning a number of different districts, or are you just envisioning, I mean, what I'd heard, and I guess 2 or 3 years ago, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, there was a move afoot to try and make a historic preservation district of the downtown area.
Well, you have a small district downtown. Some of the buildings are on the National Register of Historic Places. I would suspect that you would perhaps enlarge that, or there may be another district that has a different aspect of the CBD that they would wish to put in place that had a different, shall we say, spin on how the district would be put in place. If you mind if I use the New Orleans example. In New Orleans, you have a CBD historic district, and you also have a warehouse historic district, because they have 2 distinct paths that they are following.
And let me ask this, does each district have a separate group that is in charge of administrating or overseeing that particular
It's probably not a good thing to do that. The historic district central should be sort of the touch point for administration. The local districts, of course, would bring issues before the district commission itself, and then they would perhaps come to you. The local districts would keep track on what was going on within their district, and for example, if there was a renovation that seemed to be proceeding in a way that was in violation of the guidelines, you don't want them going out and becoming a vigilante You want that reported back to the district, who goes to the building safety and permits official and says, there's something here that should be looked into. And the best example I can give in New Orleans is that there is in the Historic District Commission a separate buildings safety officer. Now, we're much larger, and those issues are brought to him, so that way nobody gets into a neighborhood feud trying to enforce something in an individual neighborhood. But administration is relatively minor. Budgets are usually pretty slim, and transparency is all but guaranteed. People in historic preservation do not take well to having wool pulled over their eyes, and are not shy about expressing resentment, therefore. So that's a very long answer. Did I get close to the question?
Yeah, I'm with you.
You know, you and I attended this meeting there, and of course, what you were alluding to, I filled you in on what happened last time. People felt like they were getting the wool pulled over their eyes, and actually one of them told me, he says, you know, I think I said, what about the little old lady that's lived there for years? But if she can't, you know, fix us up and do what we want, she's got to move. And I said, you ain't gonna get a commission. You know? And that was up in Rick's district was where they were trying to, not your district, but where you live. Yeah, they were trying to put that over. But we discussed that quite thoroughly, and I'm gonna be watching again, as you well know.
Of course.
Because I was in a historic district in Mobile.
There's always going to be, if I can use the term, some creative tension between people who want to do something, even though the odds-on cases, they may be diminishing the value of their own property by doing something. And if you can point that out to them and they still insist that they wish to go ahead, it's up to the community to choose what level of sanction they wish to apply, if any.
Well, that's good, because, like I say, that thoroughly killed, as the opposition grew and grew and grew, and people were talking about paint and talking about the city going in and fixing up the property if nobody else could. I mean, if the owner couldn't fix it up, we would fix it up and put a lien against the property, you know, stuff like that. It's all got to be out in the open in the beginning for the people to trust.
Well, the lien business is a very tricky one to get into. You end up, if you don't have the ability to collect the liens and they can't sell the property, it just stews, it just burns itself up. So it's really better to have, try to meet somebody midway and try to point out the value of doing something, and that is much more emphasis on education. The real problem that I have encountered is with absentee landlordism and people who simply had no real interest in the community and felt somehow they could squeeze the stone and get blood out of it. But then in many cases, I think they should be brought more to task. That may be a personal opinion. I don't have to run for office, but that would be mine.
Well, I think all of us are not against it.
We need to move along a little bit here.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Thank you, Mr. Thayer.
Thank you.